Hi, I'm CJ and this is my RC channel. So 27 we're going to put on our wheel nuts, and let me just confirm something here. Okay, they have a there's two rear hexes available, a standard one and a wider one. Some people recommend running the wider one. It says here, excuse me, use A8 for assembling wide tread version chassis. Okay, this is not necessarily a wide tread version chassis, but we are allowed to do some changes, and this is a stock part, so you're not altering the kit to use these. Let me just go ahead and cut some of these off. Widening the rear track will alter a vehicle's handling, and so that's definitely something that you may or may not want to do, and it's a tuning option for you. I'm going to go ahead and set it for wide for the time being. So now we need our pins, these little guys, and do them one at a time. You want to rotate the axle so it's basically horizontal, because the pin will slide right out. Take your wheel hex, line it up so one of the two cutaways is placed horizontally, and slide it over the axle. Now, as I said, I am going to use the wider ones in the rear. Wider rear hexes are going to, of course, move the wheels out from each other by a few millimeters. That will make for a more docile car and more rear traction. In other words, the car is less likely to snap around on you sideways. And if you're new to this car and or new to Euro truck racing, I highly recommend going with the wide. You know, take these and you know, start a little pit box. I have a handful of these boxes, at least one per vehicle, you know, spare parts, nuts, bolts, tools, gears, special lube, things like that. You know, keep those in there, and if you want to change the handling of your car, try swapping them out and see how it changes the car. I definitely recommend that you do stuff like that. You know, getting the feel for your car is important, and I would also recommend that you do these changes one at a time. You know, first things first is to kind of get a feel for the car so that you can drive it without crashing it immediately. The next thing to do is to drive around a bit on set up a small track, even just an oval or a figure eight. You know, get some trash can lids, some frisbees, whatever you got that you can make corner markers out of, and you know, lay out a couple of turns, something that you can repeat again and again and again, and then make one change and try to see what the difference is. If you can't tell what the differences are, you know, that's not doing you any good to just keep tinkering, changing things. So, you know, you need to be able to drive the car well enough to be able to notice when you've made a significant change and how that is affecting the handling. And then you can decide whether that's a good change or not. Otherwise, if you're just, you know, crashing all the time and running wide, and you're not controlling the vehicle, you know, braking into turns and, you know, driving properly, you know, you want to be going fast, because you know, these things are going to manifest themselves more when the car is going fast around turns and prone to sliding. That's when you're going to notice things like oversteer and understeer. But if you can't control the car, you're not going to be able to tell you know, whether it was something that was productive. So now I need to do these wires. There's this one last piece here. And don't worry about this one if you didn't need it. This is just another for a different type of servo. So if this one says Sanwa on the back, it's a different spline count. So if you had a servo that would use that spline count, you'd be fine. You might want to keep this though. If you ever change the servo in this car for whatever reason, you may need it. So basically this end goes up front, this end goes to the rear. Just goes on there. There's a couple of body pins that it clips in with. It's these two big ones. And you're definitely going to cut yourself some plastic hose for the antenna. Some kits it's clear, some kits it's black. My last Tamiya kit that I built was black, and this one is clear. So I usually measure, so I've got, I want maybe 3/4 of an inch of wire clean sticking out the top, and then I just trim it. And you just squeeze it on in there into the hole, and bingo. So now I need to coil these. I don't need the orange, but I'm going to need to wrap it just the same. So let's see. Okay, yellow to yellow. And blue to green. Make sure they are fully seated. There we go. So, considering we have such a small amount of space to work with, and considering we can't cut those wires and size them down a little bit, that's not a bad job of routing, if I do say so myself. This wire will come across like this to plug into the battery, and again, we've got a big empty shell up here, so lots of space anyway. Let's see, we have to do our body posts. This is a little trickier because this requires a different set of directions. This is the point where we kind of leave this behind because they're talking about a more generic car body, and that is, I believe, this is all just you know, how to drive, you know, how to turn it on and off, basic boilerplate rules of RC, and parts lists. So this we have covered. So the car is built. Now we have a few other things to tidy up. Okay. So that was the big book. Okay, and that covers generic T-01 Type E, and you know, all the different bodies that go with this chassis, and there are a lot. Okay, so then we have our big parts list, which you can fold out onto a single sheet. We have a listing of parts in a language that I do not read. Thank God for this one. At least that's mostly in English, if not all in English. And one nice thing about the Tamiya kits is you can get almost every single part, if not every single part, on their website. Go to TamiyaUSA.com, find your model, and then there's usually a link underneath the picture of the model for finding both hop-up parts, which you cannot use if you are going to race this in the stock class, and stock parts, replacement parts as they call it. So anything that is in the replacement part section you can get. That includes extra wheels, extra tires. One of the rule changes that is something that is not stock per se, you are allowed to get extra wheels and run the front style rims on all four corners. And I'm going to show you why. Okay, these are the front style rims. They're kind of curved outward here, and they're a little beefier. Okay, you see these big veins here, these like plastic spokes. Okay, that provides a lot of strength between the hub and the rim. If you look at the rear ones, these are cupped. They don't have large spokes. They've got some spokes, but they're very small. And from here to here, this space right here, from here to here, this ring is prone to breaking. If you slide sideways into something, it can break the rim off of the inner hub, and your race is over. That is more a thing that's going to happen on indoor carpet tracks where you've got walls, actual walls, and some fairly solid barriers that you can run into. But this could also happen, you know, on an outdoor track with, you know, small obstacles or another vehicle hitting you. And it has happened to people I know. So one of the things I've been doing is buying extra sets of wheels. They're not very expensive, and just set the rears aside and just only mount tires on the front. The tires are all the same, as long as you're getting them off the replacement parts list. You're not buying tires off their hop-up list, and then off you go. Just get an extra set, glue your tires on. There's a few things you can do to tires for racing that are legal changes. I'm not going to go into those right now. But I wanted to tell you that you can do that. So if you decide you want to get into Euro truck racing, and you've checked at your local club and they're doing, you know, they're actually offering Euro truck racing, it goes up and down in popularity. It's really growing at the club that I'm racing at right now. There were a few guys into it, and I showed up with one this year and started running with them. And almost every weekend we've had another person buy one, build one, and show up with it. And it's getting to be quite a crowd. So it's a lot of fun. It's very inexpensive. It's a easy kit to build, as you can see. They're quite reliable. There's very few things that do break. So now we have this section and this is for the 1/14 scale Buggyra Fat Fox, and that is our Euro truck. This is where they're going to talk about your wheels. Again, they mention attaching RC mechanism units. I have no idea what they are referring to. I mount my transponder up in the front right here. I just use a self-tapping screw. I'm using a MyLapse transponder. Little self-tapping screw, drill a little hole, or just start a hole with an X-Acto knife right there and screw that sucker in. And I'll do that in a few minutes. For some reason they're showing us a different, this is for the TT02 chassis, which we're not using. We have our rear bumper assembly, and that is in a separate bag all by itself. This also has your side view mirrors. Now, according to the rules, you have to run the side view mirrors on your truck. It's part of the stock body. You have to have them. If they fall off during the race, you have to have a replacement pair for the next time you run. So it might not be a bad idea to buy an extra parts tree for this so that you have these on hand. These are the mirrors. And they just, you put a hole in the body, and you push this through the hole in the body, and you put in a body pin from the backside. So, okay, so we need to screw this bracket, because this is going to attach right here. So we need to screw this onto this, and there are a couple of little bolts. Basically plugs in right there. And let's see, where are the nuts? Okay. Those must be in yet another bag. Okay, this bag has all the body parts. It's got our body pins. When you are assembling the body, there is two-sided tape required. It is in this package as well. Let me just kind of go through this for you. Okay, these are the strips of two-sided tape, and this is very good two-sided tape. It's quite strong. That is not going to be required until the body is painted and it's being assembled. Here we have more two-sided foam tape. These are some little... I think these are for heat, or these are for the mirrors. I'll go into that later. We don't need any two-sided tape right now. Okay, these are some little brackets. Again, these are go towards putting in the... Actually, these are for LEDs. Now, this is a trim item. This is not for racing. This is if you want to make the truck pretty. This is something you want to like it's a display truck and not a race truck. If you're racing this, you don't want the weight and the hassle of lights. So those are not going to be needed, at least by me. And here we have more screws, and I don't see any nuts in here for... See what we're looking for. There they are. They're in this package. Okay. So I can show you. Okay, we are going to drop two nuts into these two slots here and here, and then those fit in down there. You can see where there's like a little V at the bottom. That's where the hex of the nut is going to fit into, and then we plug this piece on here. Excuse me, here, and then that bolts to the truck. So let's go ahead and start by getting out all the hardware. I'm going to go ahead and just all of this stuff I'm just going to dump into this dish. And I mean, just to give you an idea, okay, these four nuts are for our holding our wheels on. They're for our axles. the kit is mostly built, and look at all the extra hardware we have left over, aside from these hexes. I mean, they give us so many spares, and some of them are not relevant to this kit. Of course, they're for other versions that require other pieces, so don't be alarmed by the excessive amount of extra screws. Be glad. You may need them later, you know. You lose one out at the track or around the house, and you need a replacement. Okay, so these are our nuts, and they even say they're black, so that makes them easy to find. We need a pair of 3x10s. And that's those two. So we can just drop these into this hole here. And you might need to coax it down a bit. There we go. Okay, so now we can just take the bumper, hold it like that, drop in our first screw, and you can see that it's passed through there, and it's biting down and tightening. Don't crank it down too tight right away. Get your other screw started. Okay, one bumper. Okay, so now we need 3x8s tapping, and let's see. And we've got two 3x8 dark screws. Okay, one bumper mounted. Okay, now we go into the body, and again, there's a whole lot to this. It's a pretty complicated process all unto itself. I will do this as a separate standalone video. I'm going to be taking the car out to the track this weekend, and I'm going to be using my already finished body. Which is right here. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do the body mounts. That can be a little tricky unto itself. So let me just, I'm going to pause, do a little cleanup, and get everything ready to show you the body post. Now, if you recall, when we came across the part of the build that mentioned the body post, I said we need to skip over this because those were body posts more for cars. So for the truck, let's just quickly look at the rear. We're going to take a pair of these, and they go right in there. 3x8 countersunk. Now, it can be a little hard with the shock on. The screw kind of overlaps a teeny bit, so it can't hurt to loosen it up a bit. Now, these are going to get trimmed down to size. And again, 3x8 countersunk. Now, one of the things with these bodies, they're big and they can bounce about a bit, but you kind of want that. And here's why. This chassis has a lot of flex in it inherently, just part of its design. You know, it can rock a little bit, and you don't want the body impeding that. And this is just not me talking. I've talked to a bunch of guys who are old hands at this, and they said with this car in particular, you want the body holes to be a little bigger than necessary, and you want a little bit of space between, sometimes as much as an extra hole when you've got a pin that goes underneath the body and a pin that covers it, as much as at least you've got the 1-in-1, but sometimes it's better to actually have an extra one, like at the rear or at the front or even both, to let the body bounce around on the chassis a little bit and not influence the chassis. Now, our fronts are a little more complicated, and this is a good reason to get yourself some spares. And I did myself, and I would highly recommend that you buy yourself the parts tree with the extra body posts, because you need one of these for each side. This is the small 90-degree bend, and you need a pair of the tall stalks. Now you've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 extras of these. These aren't the ones that break. It's these, because you have to cut them down to size. And if you'll look in this section here on step number 11, subsections 1 and 2, we are cutting the top of this post off and then putting one of these posts onto it and pinning it. Now, that sounds all good and fine, and just you can't do it exactly the way they show it, and I learned this by experience. They show you cutting in between the second and third hole, okay, like right there, and you're going to be pinning through that hole, because you can't pin through the first hole because of this little gusset here. If you cut halfway in here, you don't have much plastic between the top of this hole and the outer surface, and it can tear and thus cut the come apart on you. So I recommend cutting at the hole, across the third hole, and do a little bit at both sides to kind of get it started, and then just snap through it like that. Okay, so you've got you've got all the plastic there, and then if you need to shave that down a little bit, you've got space to work with. And in this case, I don't need to. So I'm going to take one of the small body pins. They have some with the small loop and some with a larger loop. Save the larger loops for your upper pieces, the ones that are outside of the body. And these are a little harder to get through because of the how fat this piece is. There we go. So that's a lot more solid than if you cut it where they show you having you cut. So now you can take this piece, plug it in here, take your 3/8 countersunk aluminum screw. At least they look like they're made of aluminum. And snug that on, and then tighten your shock bolt back up. So there you go. That's what you need right there. And other than that, you're gonna be trimming up top, but that's something you're gonna do later. I recommend you do that when you've got the body in place. I could give you a pin count for what I have used, but I think it'd be better if you work that out for yourself. So again, gonna cut across the third hole, right in the middle of the third hole. Just shave a little bit there. And that way, again, you see how it's, if you cut in between the two holes, you're cutting half the plastic from the top of the hole up to the next hole, and that weakens it substantially. A couple of good wrecks or tumbles, and they will happen because this truck is a little top heavy and it bounces a lot. And that's kind of part of its charm and part of the fun of it. I'm going to go ahead and switch sides with this one. Start it in from the opposite side, just because. There we go. So the car is mostly built. Like I said, I'm going to be running this weekend. So I'm going to use my old body. I wanted to try out these new bearings and see how that works out. So I recommend bagging up these extra body posts and saving them. You never know when you're going to need them. In particular, these, you're probably never going to need these long L's right here, but you never know, so can't hurt to hang on to them. Just toss them in a Ziploc bag or in one of the compartments in a field box, and you're set. So other than bolting on the wheels, we have a built car. All the electronics are done. Just got to plug a battery in and turn the power on, and off and running. The motor's been broken in. Everything works fine. So we are good to go. Well, I hope you've enjoyed watching this series of videos. I hope you've learned something. If you are going to build a TT01 for Euro truck racing, this should come in very handy for you. I may do a multi-video series on building the body for this. It will take a couple videos. I'll probably just do a more generic paint job. It wouldn't help to do something really fancy, because you're gonna, if you're capable of doing that, you're gonna want to do that on your own. So I'll talk about assembly and things like that. But basically, in the event that I don't do that video series on the body, follow the directions on here. I've already described the posts, and you'll cut your post to size when you get to that point. The holes where your posts are going to come through the body are already marked, so you don't need to worry about where those are going to be. They've got little dimples in the body. You really can't screw that up, and you know, then you can put your pin locations where you think they're best for your ride height and whatnot. If you do want the information on how many holes there are on the build that I did, go ahead and shoot me a comment, and I'll pass that information along. Gluing the tires is, you know, fairly simple. There's no inserts. You're not allowed to run inserts. So, you know, simple stuff. Well, thanks for watching, and please click like. Please subscribe if you haven't already. That's a big help to me. The more likes I get, the more subscribers, the more likely I am to be able to continue doing this into the future and bringing you these videos.